Hi, and welcome to the DIY Photo Organising podcast, focusing on topics to help you with your photo management. I'm Fiona from Photo Helper.
And I'm Chantal from Photos in Order. Hi, Fiona.
Hey, how are you?
I'm very good. I'm very excited. We're having a great episode today.
Yes.
And before we head into the episode, we just want to remind you to leave your questions on our wish list. You find the link in our show notes as usual. So if you do have questions, please put it in there and we'll answer it, like today, because a listener has asked us a question about how to best store and archive printed photos. And we both know a little bit about that topic, or quite a bit actually, probably because we work with it every day. But it is a very, very specialized area. And because of that, we have invited a guest, which is Kate Jacus from the Photo Curator. Hi, Kate.
Hello, I'm happy to join you, ladies. Long-time listener,
Kate.
first-time guest.
Wonderful. Welcome. So, Kate, it is so lovely having you on as our guest today. You have just been such an inspiration in the industry, and just this area of expertise that you have. You're obviously so passionate about it, and it's just a real privilege to be able to share that knowledge with our lovely listeners. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. I do love talking about nerdy things like archival storage, so I will geek out for the next hour here. I can't wait.
Yay. Fantastic. All right, so let me give our wonderful listeners a bit of a background about you, so that, and then we've got some great questions, and we can get into the nitty-gritty of things. So I'll just share about Kate. So Kate has been a memory keeping expert, I guess, since she was a kid. Kate went from making vacation scrapbooks to earning a master's degree in museum studies, which I just think is just such a little unique area. I can't imagine the kind of things you would have gone through to study that. And also working at 2 Smithsonian museums, which is very impressive. Kate spent most of her 13-year career in the museum world, working with collections, and has a passion for organising and archival storage. So after getting an MBA and spending a decade in marketing, Kate combined both her careers and started her own photo organising business, which is called the Photo Curator, and has been doing that since 2016. Kate is also marketing coordinator for a fabulous company, which is called Archival Methods, and Kate will talk a bit about that today as well. And that's based out of Rochester, a New York manufacturing company of archival storage and presentation supplies. So Kate lives in Rochester with her husband, daughter, and 2 dogs. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you. That was a nice intro. Thanks. Yeah, I am here in New York, and excited to talk to your listeners, which I think are probably around the world. So hopefully we'll have tips that apply to everybody, no matter where you're listening from.
Oh, fantastic. Wonderful. Well, let's just launch straight in with hearing a little bit about yourself and your business. How did it all get started?
Right. Well, you definitely hit on some in the bio there. I have really loved making photo albums and scrapbooks and things ever since I was a kid, and when organizing things, I just have that organizing gene, and was excited to kind of get into museum work in college, and followed that dream for through a master's degree in museum studies, which was really cool. I focused in anthropology, which a lot of museum collections kind of have that angle, and ended up actually spending 8 years working as what they call a collections manager at a museum here in Rochester called the Strong Museum. It's a history museum. It's focused more on play and toys and games now, but we had 500,000 objects, and so I was in charge of organizing them and making sure we knew where they were and cataloging them. And we would get about 3,000 new objects a year added to the collection, and so kind of coordinating that whole process. So it's really not actually a lot different than what photo organizers do, just with objects. So it kind of ties in nicely to where I am now. And then, but to be honest, there's not a lot of money in the museum world. So I did jump out for a while to go back to school and I got a business degree and got into kind of corporate marketing, and which really, when you think of it, is storytelling, right? That's what was so appealing about marketing was sharing kind of business stories and things. And when I kind of got sick of the 9-to-5 grind, and I'd always thought maybe I could do something with photos again. And, I'd always been making photo books for my family, and maybe some other people could use help with this and the organizing part. And in 2016, the time was right for me to kind of jump out of the corporate world. It was a good 20-year run of 9-to-5 jobs. It was very nice to kind of all of a sudden have, be my own boss and make my own hours and figure things out on my own. So I started this business. I Googled photo organizing. I found APO, as it was known back then, or now it's called the Photo Managers, which has been a great organization in terms of technical information about photo organizing and business education. So that really helped me get my business going. And so it's been almost 5+ years now that I've been doing this for families and businesses. And then Archival Methods is a local company to me here in Rochester, and I had used them to purchase supplies when I worked at the Strong Museum in Rochester, and so I knew of them. And then kind of came back into into their fold as a photo organizer, and I was purchasing supplies for my clients. And then I really enjoyed getting to know Angela Copey, who's the president now, and she's got a great team, and it's just a really fantastic little company. And just, so much of what they produce is made here in Rochester, and it's just really a great story. And I love their products, and I love talking about archival storage. And so I said, hey, do you guys need any help with anything on the side? I'm happy to kind of do some marketing. And so that's how I ended up kind of with a part-time gig working for Archival Methods as well.
Awesome. Wow. You sound like a very busy woman.
There are days when I would like to be less busy, but yeah, I like to have a lot of irons in the fire.
So, so obviously we're talking about archival storage of photos today, because that's a question a lot of people, we get that really often. Fiona and I were just saying, we can't believe we haven't done an episode about that. Because it's very common now, and still, of course, we live in a very digital world these days. Mm-hmm. So, that often, is on top of the mind, but we forget that people still have physical photos, they have other keepsakes, they have important documents that, yes, you can scan and digitize them, but you're not going to throw them out. So how on earth do we keep them safe? How do we archive and store them? So maybe if you can start with photos and give our listeners a few ideas, how can they be stored safely and archived? If in a home residential environment, not in a museum environment, obviously.
Yes.
And also, of course, there might be differences that might be important to point out as well. What is the difference? And but for us people at home, what can we do?
Yeah, absolutely. And they're definitely, I like to be a little bit more practical when I think about archival storage for all of us just at home, because we don't have the resources that museums have. Even though we often think of museums as underfunded, they do, spend significant money to make sure their collections are safe. And we can do a lot of things to make sure our collections are safe too, that maybe aren't as, as expensive, to be honest, right? As kind of the museum level of storage. So there are definitely lots of things that are accessible for kind of, us everyday people and our photos and things. I guess I wanted to start out by saying really the most important thing you can do to preserve any kind of photographic material, whether it's photos, slides, negatives, is to keep it out of the light and to keep it in room temperature. So light and then fluctuations in temperature and humidity are really among the biggest threats to photos. So you'll see fading from light, obviously. If you've got lots of fluctuations in temperature and humidity, It can do things, it can crack the emulsion on photos. You can start having mold growth happening, lots of just not good things for your pictures, right? So if you take just one thing away from this conversation, it is to move your photos out of your basement, attic, or garage, if you have them there, and just store them where you live. It doesn't even matter the box at this point, just get them into a stable, room temperature environment where the fluctuations aren't that great over the course of a year, and to keep them in the dark. So that's the first thing I will say. And you don't need any archival supplies for that, really. So that's a huge help for preserving photos. And really, it's important because photos are such a great backup. The printed photos are such a great backup. We all have photos from 100 years ago that are still fantastic shape, right? So you think about all the work we do with digital, and someone might lose that hard drive, or it might lose that flash drive, or the cloud service is, there's 30 years, 40 years from now, it's hard to say where, it's a lot of work for that upkeep, and you can do some simple things to keep a really safe backup of printed photos. So I think it is important to make sure that they're at least out of the light and at least in room temperature where you live in the house, as opposed to garages or attics or basements. So that's my first point. And the next point I like to make is that really any archival storage is better than none. So kind of after you found a place to store them in like the main living part of your house, then you can think about archival storage in terms of like boxes. So, I also want to say it's best to save this step until after you've organized your photos, because this can be an investment, right? And you want to make sure that you're spending money on what you really want to save. So if you've got lots of bins of kind of disorganized photos, they're going to be fine for the next 5 or 7 years, honestly, like till you get to them. So it's not like you should rush out and buy photo safe boxes like for all your disorganized photos. You want to do that part of the project first, and then decide what you're saving, how much you have to save, and then make those archival storage purchases. So just another kind of, before you jump in, tip there. So then you're kind of ready for storage, right? You finished even just a part of your, collection, for example. You need to ask this question: do you want to easily access what you're storing? Like, would you like to flip through your photos, or maybe some family letters or documents or something like in a binder, something you can kind of quickly take off the shelf and enjoy them? Or if you digitize these photos and you're okay with them just kind of going into deep storage, like in a box on the, top of a closet shelf somewhere. So that's really when you're ready to do storage, the first question is, how accessible do you want it to be? Because that'll help you lead you down the path of, all right, I want things in binders. I want to have them, handy to flip through and to enjoy, or I just want these as a total backup in a box on a shelf somewhere. So that's kind of the first decision point, if you will, when it comes to storage. And then kind of the second decision point, I feel like, is sometimes a box is totally fine and just enough storage if you're storing photos that are all the same type, like you've got 1,000 kind of 4x6 prints. They can just be stacked right next to each other in a box. They don't need to have any dividers other than how you want, if you need dividers for organizing them, but they don't need any separation between each other. I would separate different types of photos, but they can really, if they're in good shape, they can be stacked together. But if you do have photos that need a little bit more protection, right? So if you've got something like negatives, those are easily scratched. And if you're going to if you have them and you want to save them, they should be stored in plastic sleeves, archival plastic sleeves, because they're so easily scratched. So that's kind of one photographic material that needs a little bit extra protection. Another would be kind of old cased photographs, like the daguerreotypes or ambrotypes that you see in those beautiful little cases. Those cases can be really fragile. Usually the photo inside is protected really well from the case, but then the case also could scratch other things that it's stored with, right? Because they usually have some decoration on the outside. So those cases I like to store in a plastic bag and kind of store them separately from other photos. That needs another layer of protection besides just a box. If you have like a fragile photo album, I like to store that kind of in a plastic bag, that, to kind of keep all the pieces together, and so that again needs more than just a box, right? It's just another little level of protection there. If you have something that we call friable media, friable just means that it's kind of flaky. If you've got like a chalk or a pastel drawing, or even some kids' artwork with like tempera paint or something that kind of is flaking off, that is something that you want to put in like a plastic sleeve or a plastic bag to keep all those little flaky bits together. And then the last kind of main thing where I like to think about extra layers of protection is newspaper clippings, because we all know newspaper is like the most acidy, terrible paper. We've all seen it yellow and gets brittle and it crumbles and it stains anything that it's touching. And so if you're saving newspaper clippings, first of all, they should be digitized, because they will definitely, crumble before, too long. You should put those in a separate enclosure as well. So in most cases for photos, a box is just fine. And then kind of in those cases we just talked about, I like to have an extra layer, like a plastic sleeve, a plastic bag, something. So there's, kind of different levels of things you can do depending on, what you're working with.
Kate, I think that's really helpful, actually, because when you're thinking, the way you've sort of just laid it out, I can sort of picture, when we're organising, our general collection of our home stuff. So we're going through, we've got stuff that we've inherited, we've got stuff that we've taken ourselves, we've got some photo albums, we've got some precious things in maybe frames. So that's really helpful to know. So I'm just thinking of if someone's listening and they've sort of got all their stuff, like they're in that collection, that sorting stage, and they've got it all out and about, and maybe they've done their purge and stuff like that, and sort of got rid of things that they know they won't need, and like you've suggested, to start looking at what they're going to do as an end sort of a goal with the easily accessible question, that first part that you're raising. I thought that was really great. Can you explain a little bit about some of those options? If they're outside of what you're saying about these different boxes, about, so we've got a box of just all the photos, and then we're highlighting some of these individual things. How do we address the part if we do want to flip through and easily access some of these other sort of options, like from just photos out of albums and then albums? So what are some of those options?
Yeah. So for photos out of albums, let me think. Certainly, boxes still work too, if you want to just be able to kind of, page through, or, kind of flip through the photos that way. I will say for photos in a box, and ones maybe that you want to access more frequently, it's nice to be able to have those sorted into sections. And lots of archival suppliers, archival methods included, make nice envelopes that really they look just like a photo lab envelope, right? So there's lots of space to write on that envelope, like what precise event or group of photos this is, and dates and names and all the all the stuff, and that makes it much easier. It makes those photos much more accessible if you do want to keep those photos in a box, but still be able to kind of pull them out easily. And then you'll know, the more you can organize that box with envelopes that are kind of like the photo lab envelopes, and then dividers, even, you can get very organized about it. But that makes it easier to find what you want to look at, take it out, put it back in the right spot. Some people just put all their photos in one box, and that's totally fine. But if you do want to, be able to find something down the road, using envelopes and dividers can be a real help for those loose photos like that, while they're, still in boxes, but more accessible. Does that answer that first part?
Yeah, it does. And so if they don't have albums, but they want to be able to flip through them, are there certain types of albums that they were wanting, that, just so they're already loose and they actually want to put them in an album? What sort of, because you can see out there in the shop sometimes it says archival safe and it says photo safe or something like that.
Can
we have your expert advice as to what that kind of really means, and just what to really look out for if they're wanting to buy something that is more of an album style for their archiving?
Yeah, I would say there's kind of two angles to go with the album style. There is the one that where you just pop them into kind of the photo pocket pages. So it's like a plastic page protector with, you know, slots for 4x6s or 3x5s, or, you know, or you can have a full sheet page protector if you've got larger prints or documents. So the page protector kind of angle in a binder is one way to do it. And then the you can also kind of mount them on paper pages, like a really old school photo album or scrapbook. So if you're mounting photos or documents even on pages, they still make photo corners. We sell at Archival Methods photo safe, you know, archival photo corners. There are lots of scrapbook adhesives, which are, you know, from the quality kind of scrapbook suppliers at the craft store are, you know, are suitable for mounting those onto those paper pages. So you kind of have that scrapbook feel to it. So that's kind of, you know, if you want to have it, the real paper kind of tactile side of things. And then if you're going the page protector route, you will often see page protectors and photo pocket pages at, you know, a craft supply store or kind of an office supply store. And the one thing you want to look for, sometimes they will say 100% polypropylene. And if you do see that phrase on a package from, like, you know, Staples or Office Max or whatever, that because it says 100% polypropylene is a inert, you know, non-off-gassing plastic that is considered archival. So that's like the only time I would trust a kind of regular store label on these things. If it just says acid free or it just says photo safe and doesn't give you any more specs, any more details about the material used, I wouldn't trust that. So I really recommend purchasing from suppliers that will tell you things like the pH of the paper or the cardboard used to make the box, because that will tell you if it's acid free or not. They will tell you the kappa number of the paper, because that will tell you whether it's lignin free or not. They will tell you how much calcium carbonate has been embedded into the paper during production, because that will tell you it's buffered and will then absorb some acids from, you know, and neutralize acids, you know, in the atmosphere to further protect what you're storing. It will tell you it's polyethylene, polypropylene, or polyester, and not any of the, you know, the bad plastics, right? So it's those details. You don't need to remember all those, you know, the numbers and the chemical names and things. You just want to purchase from a supplier, for the most part, that lists all those specifications. So that's really my advice, is to just not trust a single label that says acid free or photo safe, unless the one caveat, the one caveat to that is if you see something that says 100% polypropylene. That is, you know, sometimes at Staples or something, you'll see page protectors that are 100% polypropylene. And so all the ones that we sell at Archival Methods and the other suppliers sell are also, you know, safe plastics, of course. But occasionally you can find polypropylene ones elsewhere. So,
and they're good.
That's
okay.
Yeah, their polypropylene is good. Yes, but if it doesn't say that and it just says photo safe, give you any other details about the material, that's where you can't trust it, you know. And if you're going to spend the money, you might as well spend it somewhere that is going to tell you more than you ever wanted to know about the materials. So yeah, so there's so there's two ways, you know, you can put them in page protectors, or you can mount them on paper, you know, acid-free paper with you know, however, with corners or with scrapbooking adhesive or something. So yeah.
I asked something about you mentioned the polypropylene, which we know about, of course, but what we often see, you know, floating around, especially on Facebook and places like that, when people talk about storing their prints, they get those little boxes. I think they're 6x4 boxes, plastic boxes that take about maybe 50 prints, and they like to archive them in those boxes. And there's a bigger box that has about 10 or 12 of these smaller ones. They are polypropylene, but some also I've seen in our local stores, they are actually not clear, but they colorized. So there's, you know, a clear box, a red box, a yellow, a blue box in that whole set. And I'm always worried about, well, color needs chemicals, right? So is this really still photo safe or not?
That is a good question. I actually don't know specifically kind of about those colors. Like, I think I would definitely look for that 100% polypropylene. But honestly, that is a great question about the colored plastics.
Sorry.
I would have to. Yeah, no, you totally stumped me on that one. Thanks, guys.
No, but maybe that's because you don't have it at you probably don't come across it. It's definitely more of a aesthetic looking sort of an option.
I can picture it. We have a store at Michael's here that sells that kind of stuff, and I can definitely picture exactly those photo carriers. I know exactly what you mean. But yeah, I don't think I've ever picked one up to look at it. Right. But I will say,
go.
Sorry.
You go.
So as long as it says 100% polypropylene, which sometimes at those stores you have to go on a manufacturer's website to kind of do a little digging. It doesn't always say on the label. It's worth a call or worth checking out the manufacturer's site to get that information. But honestly, plastic can be just fine. I do like archival cardboard boxes a little better for photos, simply because there's better airflow, and photos do benefit from airflow to kind of keep kind of little microclimates from forming, for example. But again, the boxes that you're getting, those photo storage boxes aren't like sealed airtight, right? I mean, they're sealed, yes, they latch shut, but it's not an airtight seal. So there is still some airflow, but in general, I feel like the cardboard box leaves kind of a little bit more room for that air to circulate. But the plastic boxes, as long as you can get the polypropylene ones, they are totally acceptable. And actually the bigger bins, even like a bigger plastic bin from, Rubbermaid or Sterilite, one of those companies that you can get at a box store, they are great storage for larger kind of household heirlooms that you want to store. So they can be useful for sure.
That brings me to a question we actually also hear sometimes, because, and you mentioned it at the start, we shouldn't store photos in the garage or in the attic or the basement. And we always say that to our listeners too, but sometimes, the garage might just be the only place they can put it. It can happen. So then we got the question, I got that from a client recently, where we use proper archival boxes to store their photos after scanning, and then they asked me, so how about if I put these boxes into a bigger plastic bin and put that in the garage? And I was like, I wasn't actually sure what to say, to be honest.
No, I hear you.
Yeah, first of all, the garage is not the place you should be storing them. But if you do, is that really a good idea to put a plastic box into an environment that's not stable, as you said before, in terms of temperature and possibly also humidity, and there's not going to be airflow or hardly any if it sits in that big plastic bin? So I wasn't quite sure what to actually say to that.
Yeah, no, that's a tough one, for sure. I guess obviously kind of the first thing, as you mentioned, was if at all possible, like somewhere else besides the garage. But it's if you've got photos in a cardboard box, an archival cardboard box, and then you put it inside a bigger bin, as long as that bigger bin is polypropylene too, really the main downfall is going to be the lack of airflow and the potential to kind of have a microclimate where some moisture gets in and some mold starts or something. You can use, I think you guys mentioned we were prepping some questions, and silica gel bags, or we also in the States here at least offer those little containers of silica gel beads, which can be dried and like reused, which is convenient. So you kind of there's a little window in them, so you can see when they've all kind of become fully embedded with moisture, and then you can dry them out again in the oven or the microwave. So it's a little bit cheaper maybe, or in the long term, rather than kind of buying the disposable silica gel bags, or beads. Those can be helpful to kind of soak up moisture in an enclosed space like that. So I guess if that's your only option, I would maybe try to use a little humidity mitigation system, like a desiccant container, and that kind of situation. I do think for short-term situations, like if you I know your country had some crazy floods, just recently, right? If you're kind of worried about protecting photos from floods or, hurricanes like we have here in the US, or you need to evacuate for, any kind of natural disaster reason, it's totally fine to pack your photos into those bins and keep them there for a while. So, but if, long term, I think just making sure that you are mitigating the humidity because of that airflow is kind of the main issue with that.
What sort of a time frame is that, Kate, from your experience, where like the temporary, moving from a temporary to a more permanent is really something someone should look at?
Yeah, I think it really depends on kind of where you live, right? And where you, if you are kind of in the tropics and, and humidity, is really an issue. And so, lots of folks don't have air conditioning in their house. And so it becomes a real issue. And so you want to kind of move out of temporary storage into more, I guess, thorough or complete, archival storage. The sooner the better, but also, photos are surprisingly hardy, right? So I still have photos in non-archival containers. I will, it's just, it takes time to get to these projects, right? And so, we've all had things stored for decades in, not photo safe boxes, and they're still in pretty good shape. So really, it's if you've got a project that's ongoing and it's been a couple years, like your photos are going to be fine stored in their shoe boxes or whatever they've been in, bags, especially if they're in your house and they're in a relatively dark spot. But it's really the long term. This is like this kind of archival storage is really for the long game, right? So it's 50 years, 100 years. You're looking at the next couple generations of people who are going to want to enjoy these photos. So
yeah,
short term, it's not like, oh my God, I need to get my photos into something immediately. So
yeah. And can you tell us, what would your advice be about frames? So if people have got photos in frames, should they take them out or should they leave them in?
So frames can make great storage. If you've got a frame, especially if that it's been framed with kind of archival materials. So the backer board that whatever you're framing is that it's placed on is archival, or acid-free paper, and the matting, the mat board around on top of it is also archival. It's a great place to store something. It's really safe, especially if you've got it not hanging on the wall. it's extra safe if you've got it stored somewhere in the dark. I would keep things in frames, but if it's not in an archival framing situation, and I would maybe get it out, and then you can scan it while it's out, and then you can decide, am I going to store this separately or am I going to reframe it? If it's something, really precious, it's worth reframing with archival materials, or worth storing, with archival materials, because the, kind of being sandwiched in a frame with with who knows what cardboard on the back, and, not archival mat board, or, on top of it. And, being in that glass, as we know, can kind of make a little microclimate. We've all seen photos that are stuck to the glass because some moisture got in, and it's really hard to remove those. So if it's matted and framed in an archival way, then it's great storage. And then if it's not, it's worth taking them out to digitize and make some decisions about what to do. So
yeah.
And
I guess,
yep. So one more thing I want to say about
please.
hanging photos. So even if you hang something out of direct sunlight, like that's the main thing, like hanging something on the wall away from direct sunlight, it's still going to be out in ambient light, and it will still fade over to, faster, because it's, even out of direct sunlight, just being out in your house, it will fade faster than if it was obviously stored away in the dark. So if you've got, a photo, kind of a one-of-a-kind photo, or a family document, or something that's precious, and you want to have it on display, I would really recommend digitizing it and framing a reproduction, and then storing away the original, if it's kind of a irreplaceable, one of a kind.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say before, or you frame a copy and not, you protect.
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
Okay. Awesome. Now, you talked about documents before and the plastic sleeves. Now there's tons of plastic sleeves, I can get them at the supermarket. What do I need to look out for to make sure that it's the right plastic again? Is it the polypropylene, or what do I need to look out for?
Yeah. So there are 3 kinds of plastics that are considered archival quality. So they're inert, they're not going to off-gas, they're not going to yellow or get hard or crumbly, like we've seen so many different types of plastics. So they are the polypropylene, anything that is polyester, and often you'll see that under the brand name Mylar. Mylar is actually a polyester, and then polyethylene is another one. And they all kind of come in different combinations of clarity and strength. And some of them, the polyester plastic sleeves are a little bit stiffer plastic, and the polyethylene makes a really nice kind of softer plastic bag. I know it sounds weird to talk about a soft plastic, but yeah, they have different, and then the polypropylene is made into, it can be a sleeve, it can be a plastic storage bin. So they all have, a range of qualities, but really you want to stay away from anything that's labeled that has vinyl in the word. So polyvinyl chloride, polyvinyl acetate, PVA, PVC, those 2 especially are just terrible plastics for storage. And and so often those kind of cheap little photo albums that you can grab at the store that don't say anything about being photos, those are often vinyl based plastics. And those actually have a much shorter kind of shelf life, and 5 or 10 years you'll start to, they'll smell bad, and then by yellowing, and you can tell they're not a good plastic. So yeah. That's but plastic sleeves are great. I love to have sleeves and bags just on hand, kind of as I'm sorting photos. Even they're just, you can get them in so many different sizes, and even if you just have some 4x6s and 5x7s and some full 8x10ish, 8 or 8.5x11 size ones on hand, just to separate out photos that you come across as you're sorting that maybe are more fragile. They're a little damaged, they're bent, and you want to, just kind of keep them separate and keep them safer. If you took photos out of one of those old magnetic albums with the sticky back pages and some residue stays on the back of the print, you don't want to stack those right in with all your other prints. You want to keep those prints with residue, kind of each one in its own little sleeve or own little bag. So it is, if you don't need to put things in archival storage kind of all together as you're sorting, but it can be handy to have on hand a couple bags and sleeves to kind of separate out the pictures that need a little more attention.
So Kate, a lot of these kind of products and bags that you're talking about can come from the company that you've done a lot of work with, Archival Methods. Do they also ship to other countries? And if other people are listening and they're interested to sort of find out what their options are through Archival Methods?
Yeah, absolutely. We do a lot of international shipping. It does add, unfortunately, a lot to, or sometimes a lot to the price, depends on where you're shipping and how fast you want it. But the process is that you would place an order on the website, just kind of put the things in the cart and check out, just like you were doing it, in your country, and put your international address in. And then our policy at Archival Methods is that we will not process your order until we've talked to you about the shipping options. So we will email or call you with the shipping options and the prices, like the different carriers and the prices, and let you make a decision whether or not you want to go through with the order. And it's fine if you don't, or if you do, let us know, how to ship, and then we'll charge your card and finish the order. So you can kind of, without any worry, you can kind of, tally up your order and see what it would be for shipping before we process it.
Fantastic. And so what, just say, if it was too maybe expensive with the shipping and stuff, what kind of recommendations would you give listeners if they were to try to find some services or some other products in their local area? What would they even kind of Google? We've got a few companies that we use in Australia, but, we've got a lot of listeners from different places in the world and even in different parts of Australia. So what do you Google?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think, honestly, even just starting with archival storage is a great term, right? Is a great search term. And you could even throw the word, museum storage in there, because certainly museums across the world need to have resources for buying these types of materials. Or even the keywords like acid free or photo safe supplies or acid free supplies. Those are kind of the some very common keywords that go along with this kind of storage. And again, just looking for a supplier wherever they are that is open about the specifications of the materials they've used, because there are standards about what it means to be archival. Like there's not a standard about who can use a term acid free or photo safe, but there are standards about what that means in terms of production. And so most, I would say if not all archival suppliers, who sell to institutions and to galleries and to artists and, people who care about this like us, they are going to tell you like everything you want to know about, the cardboard they use, the plastic they use, all the things, all those details. So honestly, you don't even need to know what those details are, but just seeing them listed is honestly enough to feel like you can trust a supplier.
Yeah.
So
one of the things I'd be really interested, because, and I think your knowledge is so unique in this area, I think with your experience in the archival expertise, and then also very much so in the personal photo organizing space. If listeners were keen to just even have a consultation with you, just sort of talk about their options, and even over a visual Zoom or online meeting, sort of hold up what they've got, and you do consulting like that for people? Is that an option?
Yeah. No, I absolutely do. I actually was just emailing today with a colleague, and she sent me some pictures of some negatives. She had some clients' negatives. We were talking about storage options. So I do that all the time. I love talking about archival projects, and I'm happy to have these conversations. If it's a question here or there, I'm happy to do it. But if it's more of a project consultation, I'm happy to set up a time and have it be a little bit more official. Meeting. And so it's so fun. I just love hearing what people have, and it's always a challenge to kind of see, all right, well, how can we help, and what can we do with this, and what are the options? So I'm open to that. Absolutely.
Oh, good. Well, we'll make sure that we put all those details in the show notes, and you can leave all those details. But tell us what's something that just made me think of a question. What's something like, what's one of the most interesting archival things that you've had to?
Oh, that is a good question. So one of the most interesting kind of storage situations that it wasn't one where I was working with the objects themselves, but I worked in another department of the museum, and then would kind of have reason to go talk to the curatorial and the collection staff. It was at the National Museum of the American Indian, and it's one of the Smithsonian museums. They have a place in Washington, D.C., but also a branch up in New York City where they had lots of storage. And the storage required for first of all, for some incredibly delicate kind of indigenous objects, these amazing feather headdresses and, stone implements from thousands of years ago. Like the range of things they had to store was fascinating, but then also the attention they paid to kind of the cultural heritage of these things, and being very clear on the storage containers. Who could handle this? What time of year something could be handled? Maybe this was only to be, handled or dealt with by people from that nation, from that indigenous tribe. So just really very, storage it's like, for the safety of the objects, but it also, it's about the objects. It gives you a little look into, the meaning and the history and everything behind these objects too. It was really fascinating to kind of just see, the scope that of kind of collection storage at a place like this. So that was really fascinating.
Yeah, really that's true. Which is actually unintentional, but it kind of links to what if people have other objects other than photos?
Absolutely. Yes.
Because they do, we come across that too, don't we, Chantel, when we're dealing with, and helping people. They'll have, like you've talked about, newspaper articles and things like that, but even, the first little baby shoes, or you've got, the list is endless with memorabilia.
Military medals, or, somebody, grandma's quilt or something. Absolutely. So really that, when you're storing objects, the main concern again is to keep them out of the light and keep dust and pests away from them. And so boxes really are the best way to handle storage of objects, lots of different objects. And there are archival suppliers like Archival Methods sell so many different sizes and shapes of boxes that it's usually fairly easy to find one that fits what you're storing. When it comes to storing objects, the main thing is to store like with like, so that if you've got, kind of some textiles, let's store all of them together, right? Kind of family textiles or personal, some clothes or kind of, personal accessories, store that kind of stuff together. Don't mix that in with some framed pieces and some trophies, some sports trophies, right? So kind of keeping like with like is important. It's, it's better, kind of for packaging, and, the box is not weighted in a weird way and things aren't shifting around, right? And then just making sure you pad things. I love also having archival tissue on hand. It looks just like regular tissue paper. So if you get some, you should label it and make sure you're not using it for wrapping because it looks just like regular tissue paper, but it is archival. And so it's great to just crumple up in a box around kind of whatever you're storing. I would say you've got like some old baby shoes, right? I would actually take some archival tissue, I'd crumple it up inside the baby shoe to kind of let it keep its shape, right? And then I would put them in a small box, or maybe in a corner of a bigger box with some other personal articles, and I would just have that crumpled tissue around it to kind of to protect it. What else do I want to say about storing objects? Oh, it's very important, especially because if you're kind of padding and having tissue in all these boxes to, take up space and make sure things aren't shifting around. It's hard then to see what's in the box, right? So especially with storage, labeling the box, even putting a little inventory sheet on top, even like a handwritten sheet of what's in here, laying that on top of the box before you close it. Labeling the outside, of course, labeling your photo boxes is important too. But especially for objects, you don't want to be having to go in there and like paw through all this tissue to see what's in there. So the other thing is fun to do is using boxes meant for slides. So Archival Methods sells these great long, maybe they're 8 or 10 inches long, and they're maybe 2 inches wide, and maybe the height of a slide, right? They're meant for slide storage, a nice long narrow box for slide storage, and they come with little caddies inside to kind of further separate your slides, but they make fantastic storage for tiny little items. So maybe a collection of medals or little jewelry or things you want to just keep in these little caddies inside these nice, neat little boxes. So even if something, says it's for photos, really archival boxes can be repurposed for just about anything. So and then using little bags, using archival plastic bags is a great way to also kind of just kind of keep things separate if you're storing lots of different things in a box, jewelry or pins, or if someone's got a pin collection or any kind of thing. So just making sure it's padded, storing like with like, and then labeling the boxes is what's important for objects.
Fantastic. There's so much information. Do you?
I know there's so much. I know.
Do we when we put on our show notes and how people can reach you, do you have like a checklist of things to look out for or something, or maybe you can put one together?
Actually, I will. You guys, you'll have this link to add in the show notes. But I did put together, with the help of kind of my team at Archival Methods, a couple years ago, we put together a preservation guide for family heirlooms, and it focuses mostly on paper and photos, but there is some information kind of about objects in general, and it really goes through like how to think about a family archive project. So it's a really nice guide. We have it as a PDF on the Archival Methods website, so I will make sure that link is in the show notes for you guys. And So it really goes through everything we talked about today, and then it's got specific sections on on how to frame things safely, how to use boxes for storage, binders for storage, different kinds of enclosures. So into more of the specifics. It's also kind of like catalog. Like we didn't put prices in, and we didn't put all the options in. We wanted kind of a more evergreen piece than a catalog that would be wrong, 8 months from now. So it's a really, I think it's a really fantastic guide. We've gotten good feedback on it, and it's probably that's the best. There are some checklists in there for different things. So that's probably the best resource for folks kind of just starting out on the archival storage journey.
Yeah, that is fabulous. And I think it's just I'm so glad that we did this topic today. Thank you so much for coming in.
It's been fun.
Yeah, sharing with us. There's so many bits of information, and I think even though we're around it all the time, aren't we, Chantel? Like we said, it's a very specialized area. And I think what you've done is you've just brought it back out of the Smithsonian into the home and made it very relevant to us. So thank you.
You're welcome. That's kind of my mantra is, archival storage can be for everybody. It doesn't have to be this fancy museum stuff. We can learn some things from them, but even if you've just got some photos in boxes, they're going to be, much happier in 100 years than if you kept them in, the photo lab envelopes and a shoebox. So even little things can make a big difference a couple generations down the road. So that's the real important thing.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Kate.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been great to chat with you guys. We talk so often for other things, but it's nice to actually talk business or talk kind of, talk shop a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's been fun.
It is. Yeah. It's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So thanks again, everyone, for listening. And I really hope that you have just been able to take some tidbits. We'll put all the details. We know Kate's gone through a lot of great stuff, so we'll put all that in the show notes, and also you can find them obviously over at the website. But as always, just reach out to us. Keep a tab on the newsletter that comes out, and if you haven't registered, just go and do that over at the website. And I think these future episodes can really benefit from hearing what listeners are really wanting to hear about. So just pop over and jump into that wish list area if you've got something specific or even anything that's come up from the episode today, and we'll make sure that we can direct you to Kate and answer any questions that you've got. So thank you. Leave us a review if you would like to have any other feedback. And signing off, I am Fiona from Photo Helper.
And I am Chantel from Photos in Order. Thanks for tuning in. And thanks again, Kate, to you. And happy photo organizing. See you guys.
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.